You're tuning in to episode 158 of the 4Ps. Do you have CAPTCHA anxiety? You know CAPTCHA. It's that logging in system that websites have to make sure that you're not a robot. I'm not just talking about a fear that you're going to mess up or miss a box or mistype a letter, but like real anxiety. Like somehow the direction to click all the boxes with the school buses is really a test of your intelligence that you can't possibly win. It's okay. It happens to the best of us.
The 4Ps. Professional. Political. Practical. Personal.
The fact that CAPTCHA is the best system we can come up with for identity security and privacy protection for logging into websites is kind of sad. Or maybe I'm just overthinking it. After all, I do feel like my brain's neurochemistry has changed drastically since I've made the final transition from skim cow milk to 100% almond milk. Something personal. Several weeks ago, while watching my daughter play outside, I found myself in awe of her creativity and innovation. She'd imagined up this entire idea around the magical power of unicorn horns and how they give girls like her confidence to try new things and excel. Kind of like a lucky rabbit's foot or some other talisman, right? She even made a prototype horn out of Play-Doh to show me exactly what it was that she was talking about. She was enthralled with the idea, but what made it so much fun for me was the way she was pronouncing it. It's unicorn horn, like a mix between elements of Long Island, Staten Island, and Old English, which naturally turned into a sing-song-like jingle that our family has not been able to stop laughing at. Anyone who's been around a 7-year-old girl knows just how important unicorns can be in their lives. Clothing, toys, books, movies, you name it, the unicorns are everywhere. Sydney and I have spent a lot of time talking about why a unicorn horn and what it could mean for girls, for boys, for non-conforming, right? Even grown-ups. But one thing that quickly emerged was the idea of a unicorn horn as a sports mascot of sorts. Not for any team, but more of like generic inspiration, and thus the idea of unicorn horn sports was born. The idea to sell them as t-shirts, empowering, inspiring, confidence building across a variety of sports and activities was a natural byproduct of this idea. And with some of the initial designs and samples now created, Sydney's dream of creating an online store to sell her unicorn horn t-shirts is now consuming our family. Fortunately, her dad has some digital marketing and media experience skills, but no real knowledge of how to actually run an e-commerce business, and especially anything having to do with fashion or apparel or clothing. But we're learning this together, and seeing her excitement as her idea comes to life has been incredible. Of course, I had the Instagram and Twitter accounts set up before we actually had the real website, but that part of the project is what we worked on this past weekend. I spent most of Saturday creating a Shopify account for the first time. I'd heard and learned so much about Shopify, but I never actually experienced it firsthand until now. And I have to say, it's not only simple, but it's really intuitive. And while the fees aren't ideal, most of the work is actually done for you, and we're ready to roll. So as we learn about e-commerce firsthand, now is the time to tap into some of the marketing knowledge that I've accrued over these last few decades. Yes, Sydney actually did help me design the whole line of over a dozen unicorn horn sports t-shirts that are now available for purchase. Available in youth and adult sizes, as well as in a variety of colors and sports. We've also launched this just in time for June, and while a get-rich-quick payout would be great, that's not what this is about for us. It's not what we're in this for. Instead, a percentage of all sales are going to go to support the Trevor Project, because this is Pride Month, and we want to make sure that we give back. Something practical. Now, several years ago, I was introduced to a wonderful professional management coach, both as part of group training and individual sessions set up and orchestrated by my company at the time. We've kept in touch ever since, and I have always cherished and valued and revisited a lot of his lessons and the things that we talked about. And one such idea around personal development has been about change itself, our ability to change. And it's part of life, right? As are the obstacles to change, such as procrastination, personal fear and anxiety, laziness, impulsiveness. Now, if you want to change your life and achieve your goals, then you have to address your failings one by one. Whether you tackle your laziness, your impulsivity, or just other bad habits or traits, you have to acknowledge them first, but make sure that you take a tailored approach to those misgivings and make use of commitment devices, good habits, social influences, and even something called temptation bundling. A good place to start is actually setting goals if you want to change and talking about them. People do this with New Year's resolutions. It can be a fresh start to a year, but it doesn't just have to apply at the start of a year. It could be any milestone or fresh start, right? Like a birthday or the start of a new semester or a new job or any given Monday. A fresh start changes your perspective. It puts distance between the past, the failed attempts or mistakes, but we have to avoid several pitfalls and potential roadblocks that could happen along the way. Impulsivity, also known as present bias, is one such pitfall. When you act impulsively, you prioritize instant gratification over larger, long-term goals. One way to beat it is a tactic called temptation building. It's a way of pairing a pleasurable activity with a demanding but worthwhile task in order to make the work seem more appealing. In other situations, gamification might be a better answer to battling impulsivity, right? Adding game-like elements, leaderboards, points, challenges, just general rewards. Procrastination is another pitfall. We've all been there. We just may not want to talk about it yet. And the problem with procrastination is that it often compounds and creates a hole too big to overcome. But commitment devices can help there. These are systems designed to restrict some of your freedom in order to limit temptations. It could be a financial fine or a penalty, or even just making a public pledge. Writing this newsletter, talking about these videos and content here is somewhat of a public pledge. I say I'm going to do it every week, and then I kind of feel obligated to keep doing it. Public pledges are less costly than fines, obviously, but they're still surprisingly effective. By making your aims, your objectives known to your friends, your family, your viewers, your readers, it can be a powerful incentive to keep working hard. Laziness, it's another vice to which so many of us can occasionally, and more often, fall victim. Human nature is to take the easy way out when facing obstacles. Habits and routines are the cure to laziness, building up that muscle memory. Neuroscientists have shown that the more ingrained a habit becomes, the less we rely on the parts of our brain involved in reasoning or thinking or questioning, right? Like the prefrontal cortex. And the more we depend on the sections of the brain responsible for action and motor control, take away any opportunity for laziness. Crises of confidence can be barriers to change. And one way to overcome that, ironically enough, is to give other people advice. We as human beings like to help each other. So when we notice someone struggling, we try to lend a hand. And very often our assistance takes the form of advice. We offer tips on everything from parenting to dieting, on making friends, dating. Unsolicited tips and guidance can prove to be serious obstacles to change when they are directed at you. But offering people solicited guidance in a more structured way will paradoxically boost your confidence in your own abilities. Also, surrounding yourself with good, caring people is critical, as if you got the right friends, it can also change you for the better. Something professional. Around this time, actually, last week, I found myself as part of a Zoom meeting that had at least 16 people taking part in it. Now, this wasn't one of those large all-hands meetings where people are presenting. This was meant to be more of that regular weekly work session between client and agency teams. More accurately, there were 14 people from my company and 2 people representing the client team. It's no one's fault, really. Projects and concurrent work streams have proliferated in really great ways over the last few months, but more people just kept coming to this weekly meeting. It's going to be the last time. Now, the last one that I went to was that meeting, and considering we have 8 or 9 capabilities collaborating on a truly omni-channel marketing relationship, we don't need multiple layers of all of those groups, from all those groups, attending those meetings. So now more than ever, we know that virtual communication needs to be planned, organized, and optimized. We don't all need to be in these meetings. Had we not been working in this new perma-remote professional landscape, who knows how this specific weekly recurring meeting would have actually evolved. We seemingly have more internal meetings, more informal check-ins, and even client meetings than we ever did when we were working together in offices. Without in-person opportunities to connect, planned meetings, virtual meetings, in a number of different formats have taken over. A glance at my scary weekly calendar, my daughter calls it a sea of red, just because of all the blocks that happen. That could include in any given week capability leadership meetings, geographical leadership meetings, planning meetings, performance reporting recaps, those all-hand meetings, presentations by country, by entire company, monthly finance meetings, quarterly business meetings, weekly action reviews, and of course, every possible combination and permutation of one-to-one, one-on-one meetings, weekly or bi-weekly, between team leaders and relevant staff members or their employees. Anyone who's ever worked, well, anywhere, knows just how terrible some meetings can be and how challenging meeting culture has become. They can interrupt our workflow. They can often feel like no more than a long-winded rehashing of information that you're already familiar with. But not always. Meetings are also essential to a smooth-running company. Unfortunately, many leaders don't know how to use them effectively. A previous CEO with whom I once worked would occasionally stroll the office and count the number of people in a conference room, and then send the team lead a calculation of the cost of the meeting based on hourly rates. With executives, that could be in the thousands of dollars. Overall, on a yearly basis, meetings can cost companies hundreds of thousands of dollars that are not realized. While there certainly are bad meetings, it's important not to overlook the positive effects that meetings can have, such as boosting employee morale or improving shared collective vision, knowledge, purpose. The most difficult times of day for employees are actually in the midday dips between 11 a.m. and 2 or 3 p.m., when energy levels are often at their lowest. This is the perfect time to hold team meetings, and before and after those meetings is when you can get real individual work done. I've been a part of daily stand-up morning meetings. I've been a part of 3-minute adrenaline-boosting meetings. Both have value with the right planning and attendees, so there's really no right formula except to look at who's coming and what the purpose is. Holding regularly scheduled meetings is still a great way to communicate and get everyone on the same page. But that's not all. Meetings can also improve employee skill sets, strengthen teams, and help build the way the company actually works and the foundation of the company's values and goals. But meeting efficiency is both an art and a science. One of the simplest solutions is to make sure people show up on time, which means getting people to arrive before the scheduled start time. Being timely is a sign of respect. And being tardy, being late, clearly signals disrespect, both of the company and of your coworkers. Another solution is to create a culture of opting out, saying no, making sure that you check in with someone later to get the notes. People often get called to meetings even though they have no real business being there. So why not share the agenda if you're planning a meeting a few days in advance and allow people to opt out? People can arrive for and then depart after their relevant segments too. It's a better use of time. Any meeting will bring with it the chance to staff and build skills within individuals who can flex different professional muscles. I like to assign a few roles, such as moderator, whose job it is to make sure everyone sticks to the agenda, and give people the opportunity to present at various stages. Different people can be assigned to these roles so that a variety of people can get the chance to try new things. You don't have to have the typical leaders running every meeting, running the show. You can also use meetings to bring quiet personalities out of their shell, which is great. There's no avoiding the fact that things are and have changed, and that goes for meetings as well. Email and Slack are often no better, increasingly out of control now as well. It's just hard to keep track of everything that's coming in. Due to the pandemic and increased globalized workforce, especially at my company, virtual and online meetings have become a step up from traditional meetings. The first thing we have to remember now is that we speak differently than we ever did before. If people can't see you because they're not on video, it's important to pause, to give people an opportunity to jump in, even when there is some sort of visual or video cue where we can learn from and see how people want to engage. Right? Visual gestures to let other people know that you're engaged in the discussion are also important. A simple mm-hmm or shaking your head can help people understand that their message is being heard and getting across. Ultimately, the difference between internal meetings and external meetings, those differences are significant. Meetings are all about communication. By bringing together leadership and team members, meetings are the best way to make sure that everyone is on the same page in regards to their goals and how well the team is working. And something political. Just when you thought things couldn't get any lower or embarrassingly fucked up in Congress, we've reached a new nadir, a pit, a bottom, a valley in terms of expectations, leadership, civility, partisanship, actual tangible achievements. Until last week, I retained a small iota of hope that there would be at least a few issues on which most of our elected officials could agree. But that ended when they failed to unilaterally support an investigation into the armed attack on the Capitol, that insurrection from January 6th, when a riot basically erupted on the floor of both houses of Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate, and sent most of our elected officials fleeing into the tunnels and recesses in search of safety. How 60 senators could not support an investigation, not even passing a law. It's just beyond embarrassing. Senators could not support an investigation into a threat on their own safety and their lives. So that's it. Congress is done. It's over. There's no coming back from this. We're not talking about social or economically controversial issues here. So it's hard to envision where there can or will be common ground ever again. The actual story goes like this. Last week, Republicans in the Senate killed a bill to establish a bipartisan independent committee to investigate the January 6th insurrection. The vote was 54-35, and yet the 35 no votes won because of the Senate filibuster rule, which requires 60 votes to break, even if the minority doesn't show up to vote. Democratic leadership can still appoint, they can create a commission, but without bipartisan support, that commission will be assailable. I've gotten what seems like 20 or so emails from Nancy Pelosi and Democratic leaders just in the last week alone who are clearly irate and were hoping, right? Nancy Pelosi was clear that she preferred a bipartisan approach to this, but the only clear deduction is that Republicans feared that some of their own would be implicated. As a student of history, I cannot think of a more obvious, overt, single-day attack on our democracy in our history. But representative leaders like Florida's Matt Gaetz or Georgia's Marjorie Taylor Greene resort back to the original big lie that led to the insurrection in the first place, that Trump won the election. Both have directly referenced the Second Amendment to talk about armed rebellion against the government. President Biden continues to focus on economic and social issues across the country, from COVID recovery to job creation, but it's hard to imagine any real measurable progress with obstructionists constantly standing in the way. His 63% job approval rating should be substantial enough to push an agenda of progress with Congress, but why would you have any confidence that that's what's going to happen? Last week, the Biden administration proposed a $6 trillion budget, tying together the three plans he's already proposed. The $2.3 billion American Jobs Plan, the $1.8 trillion American Families Plan, and the $1.5 trillion earmarked in discretionary spending for education, health, science, infrastructure, climate change issues. The goal to rebuild the middle class and make America globally competitive again is what this budget is all about. Unfortunately, Republicans have vowed to oppose all tax increases and want no part of Biden's proposed spending. Looks and sounds like more of the same, which is going to result in more of the same, what's happening now. Inequality, suffering, moral decay. On that positive note, have a great summer, and I'll see you next week.